Grant Stewart, a Toronto-born tenor saxophonist, moved to New York City in the 1990s, studying with jazz masters like Donald Byrd and Barry Harris. Known for his powerful sound and deep command of the jazz tradition, Stewart's performed internationally with legends like Harold Mabern and Clark Terry. He's released 20 albums as a leader, with highlights such as Grant Stewart Trio on Cellar Live and the award-winning Live at Smalls. Consistently recognized in the DownBeat Critics Poll and featured in JazzTimes, Stewart stands out as one of the top tenor saxophonists of his generation. And we're live. Grant, good to see you. Thanks for being with me today.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
So, Grant, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was the Tribeca Jazz Institute. It seems that you are the brains behind this operation. I think it's such a wonderful thing that people can get this, what almost, to me, it seems like they would get knowledge in a jazz college program through this program. So talk to me a little bit about starting the program and everything.
Basically, I started it because I honestly was not thrilled with jazz education. I didn't go to school myself. I learned basically from taking private lessons and playing and hanging out with people that played better than me. And sometimes some great players. I was fortunate to play with at a young age. That really was my university. That was my college, and I was very fortunate. And it was a little bit different back then. But I wanted to create a school that was that. I mean, loosely modeled after Arnie Lawrence, when he started the new school, kind of had the same idea, like the anti-school school, like everything you hate in the school removed, and just the information and the real stuff. There's a lot of jazz is very difficult to teach. Art is difficult to teach. And for me, teaching jazz is it's very much through showing. You learn through doing it with someone, not having it explained to you, not having homework and not writing papers on it. So I basically wanted to create an environment that was more like a boxing gym or a dojo or something, where you just went and you worked hours and hours and played and played. Because that's how I learned how to play. And you played, and I bring in, I've tapped all my, my peers and cats a little older than me. They're, basically all the greatest players in New York to come teach there. And a lot of them are great. It's funny. Great musicians are almost great teachers. We have great musicians. We have great teachers too, but mainly my focus was bringing in the top musicians, and having them play with the players. It's for an advanced level player. It's most of the students that come are either a lot of people are leaving the other schools to come here. Some are coming after the other schools because they didn't get what they needed. So we have a range of ages and players. Some are just really good young players that are coming, like 17. We have a couple of 17-year-olds. Kid from Australia, amazing drummer, Tosh Gashad, came. And then we have people as old as 28, 29. Actually, we have one student that came to us that's he's an actual physicist teaching at NYU, and he's coming. He's a great guitar player as well, so he's there. So it's like, if you can play, you can come. And it's an amazing program, and it's turned out better than my wildest dreams. People have come from all over the world, and so the music was the main thing, the main impetus behind it. The second purpose for creating the school was, one of my other problems with jazz education is the cost. It is crippling. I mean, you come out of jazz school, if you go to school in New York, unless you get a full ride, you come out with a couple $100,000 in student loan debt.
I think I just finished paying my loans after 20 years, 20 years.
To me, that's criminal. I'm sorry. I saw that's always bothered me. And so I finally was given an opportunity to make a difference and do something. So I did. So our tuition is a sliver, of what it's already incredibly low. I've kept it, thanks to the nonprofit status of the overall school, Church Street School of Music and Art. We've been able to keep the tuition extremely low. And on top of that, I've raised scholarship money to make it even lower for students, based on merit. So that's, the music and the cost has been that's the main purpose of the school.
One of the things too, well, first of all, I just want to say this is absolutely incredible, because I think it's what the jazz world needs right at this time, because more and more music departments and colleges are closing. That's just a fact. So, this is incredible. And one of the things that, there are a music program, if someone wants to study, they can only take a certain number of students. Are you guys, full in a sense? Like, could you accept more students, or is it like
Right now we're at our capacity. We've reached, this is
you're at capacity right now?
third year. And that's the other thing. I needed to keep it small.
Right.
Because once it gets big, even at the size it's at now, it's hard to keep it as grassroots and real as I want to. The bigger it gets, the more admin and more just it becomes an institute. Even though the name institute is in jazz, Tribeca Jazz Institute, I hate institutes. Immediately they start working against their initial purpose. Pretty soon, once they get some size, becomes secondary. So I've kept it small. We're at 3 quintets and a vocal program of 4 people, and that is the max for the program.
Yeah, I think if someone said to me, "I'm really serious about jazz," I would say, I would advise not going to music college, just because, the jazz dream is, I'm not saying it's obsolete, but it's certainly changed. I would say go get a great private teacher and try to get into this program and go hear music.
Yeah.
And
I mean, our thing is all it's private lessons and playing. That's it.
So you have to take inspiration somewhere as far as what's being taught. Are there specific things that lessons you've learned throughout your, life and just career that you really strive to teach the students, and have the certain things you really want the students to come away with that you really thought about?
I mean, every teacher, I let every teacher do their own thing.
Right.
So, for instance, in a week, the other great thing is you have so many teachers doing your ensembles, so you'll have, we do it in 4-week cycles. So you'll have like 4 weeks on Monday of Willie Jones, and then 4 weeks on Wednesday of, Eric Alexander, and then 4 weeks on Friday of, could be anyone, could be Lucy Agazarian, could be, a number of our teachers. And then in 4 weeks, it switches up again. And you have, it could be, also my partner in crime is Chris Byers, who's an amazing saxophone player. He's become like the assistant director. So he's come on. He came in about a month, 12 weeks ago. So he started working with us there too. So you get to work with a lot of players, but each player teaches in their own. I let them teach whatever they want. I don't get in their way. They can say, within reason. I tell them, be honest with, a problem in education now in general, but I've seen it in jazz, is that you can't be honest with the players.
You're walking on eggshells.
You're walking on eggshells because you're going to get fired, because the school needs the tuition to keep going. So you can't anger the student. The customer's always right. And we just don't operate like that. Like the teachers are respectful, but they're honest with players so that you can get better. All the players that get in are at a very high level. And when they come in, I tell them, these teachers are going to be brutally frank with you, and it's going to help you.
Yeah.
So that's how we do it.
But I just wanted to ask you just one more quick question about the school. So as far, you mentioned that some of these people are in their teenagers, some of them are in their 20s. So what do you think young players today should focus on that often gets overlooked in jazz education, if you were just, speaking to someone, that wasn't in the program?
I mean, once they're at a certain level, once you can play, you can play tunes, you can play changes, you're basically professional level. Most of the players in the program are pretty much all of them are professional level. Some of them have been working for years already.
I love that.
But like, for instance, in my ensemble, when, I tell them, if you don't know tunes, I can't hire you. I run the ensemble basically like we're on a gig. So I've hired you on this gig. I'm going to call tunes. If you don't know the tune, we're learning that tune, and you're going to just keep piling up the tunes over the weeks. You're going to increase your repertoire, because if you want to work, especially if you're a rhythm section player, it's like you need to know tunes. Like, I don't care. I tell them, I'm like, I don't care how well you solo. If I have to go through 10 tunes to find one that I can't hire you. Simple things like that. Simple things like intros, outros, ending songs. Just basic stuff that gets skipped over a lot in in music school, because a lot of these people are coming already from finishing programs at the major school. So, you know, sometimes people have referred to the school as like a finishing school, but I mean, there's little things like that, little detailed things like that are very important.
Yeah, you said you're treating it almost like a gig. That's experience you can't get in the classroom, yet they're getting it in your classroom. It's really
Yeah.
cool. Um, as far as you, as and your music, your artistry, is there a non-jazz artist that's influenced your musical thinking that comes to mind?
I mean, there's a lot of non-jazz artists that have influenced influenced me as a musician. They haven't necessarily influenced my jazz playing, but I mean, I also write classical music. That's my alter ego. So yeah, there's a lot of great composers that have influenced me in that area. It may influence my jazz playing, but if it does, it's on a level that it's not, it doesn't really. I keep it very compartmentalized. But I mean, I grew up listening to rock music. I grew up listening to rap and funk and everything, As a teenager, I went through my phases. I listened to everything, around the house. From the time I was a kid, we'd have Fats Waller playing, then we'd have like the Carter family playing, then we'd have, early country music, then we'd have, like Cape Breton kind of fiddle music and, jazz, all the, my dad was a jazz musician as well. So we'd have stuff playing all the time. He'd be playing piano, I'd be playing tunes. So there was a lot of different, I had two older sisters in the 70s, so there's a lot of rock happening, so I had a lot of different influences.
Were you going to check out a lot of live music in Toronto?
Yeah, it was when I was a kid, it was great. There was a bunch of, I mean, now there's basically the Rex Hotel
Mhm.
and the Jazz Bistro. I think it's just called the Bistro now. Is still going. But when I was a kid, there was probably 4 or 5 clubs that were bringing in people from New York.
Oh, wow.
Like rarely. This is in like the 80s. Like my dad would take me to see stuff. Like Clifford Jordan, George Coleman. Uh, I saw Count Basie when I was a kid.
Mhm.
Uh, I saw a lot of great players in Toronto. They come and they play with local rhythm sections. I mean, there's fantastic players in Toronto, the top level rhythm section players, corps players in Toronto. So yeah, I got to see Joe Henderson, quite a bit and
Did
different
you
things.
meet him?
I did meet him. Yeah, yeah, he's a very nice guy. It's funny. I was supposed to have a lesson with him, and it was all set up, and then I had to come. I had to cancel. I had to come. I had to put a down payment, first and last month's rent on an apartment in New York. So I had to cancel the lesson. And then I never pinned him down to get it again. So unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I don't know if I heard that Kenny Garrett tried to get a lesson with him and he couldn't, so he just hired him for his record, and that was the.
So that's, yeah. He was supposed to be a great teacher. I mean, I talked to people that studied with him. Um, but I missed my lesson with him. So that's
Well,
life.
you always go back and listen to the records.
Yeah, that's the real.
As far as when it comes to your playing, the way you phrase has been described as deeply swinging and soulful. So how conscious how conscious are you of the phrasing when you're playing, or is it how much of it is feel? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I don't really think about it. I mean, I think about sound and playing. I mean, but I'm not consciously trying to swing.
Mm.
I mean, I imitate people that swing, but I never go out there trying to think I'm really going to try and swing. It's just. But I imitate a lot of players that are, I mean, so obviously Sonny Rollins is a big influence, and Coleman Hawkins and Sonny Stitt and Byrd and Dexter. I mean, a lot of players that were swinging influenced me. So that's, I try and play as they play.
I feel like I don't know if you feel this way still or not in your career, but when you're learning how to improvise, and you're doing it for decades, and you just want to improve, you're making like these little baby steps.
Mhm.
But when it comes to as overall just being in like the right frame of mind when you play, that sort of thing, and just leaving your ego off the stage, and there're just like a million things you can think about
Yeah.
when it comes to the psychological components. Are there certain lessons you're still having when you play live, like things that you are learning in that way, or is at this point, it's a different thing when when you play live?
I mean, yeah, there's all, there's less of that, less of kind of the inner monologue than there was when I was younger. I don't know if that's just I stopped caring or just,
No, that's the best way. That's the best advice. You have to stop caring.
But I did, I did spend some time and energy in my late 20s, early 30s on that whole, inner game. What I remember when I was 18, I took a lesson with a great tenor player up in Toronto. He's actually from Vancouver. His name's Phil Dwyer. Amazing saxophone player, piano player. But he gave me a book called The Inner Game of Tennis. And later on, there were different books, The Inner Game of Music, The Inner Game, blah, blah, blah. But the original one was The Inner Game of Tennis. So I remember reading that, and that kind of started me on the path of, really your enemy is your mind.
100%.
Is what, causes a lot of the problems. So, I spent time trying to, lessen that inner voice and just play. I think as you get older, it just dies down a bit. I think it's always there to a point, and it changes. Some days feels like everything's, working, and then you get a bad read or your horn's not, in great shape and throws you off. But yeah, definitely less than when I was younger.
Yeah, it's it's a journey. That's what, when people, ask me about it, I think that's, just like any other thing in the arts, it's not, there's not an end goal. It's just about the journey itself. That being said, you're on this journey in Toronto, but then you have to make the decision that you're going to go to the jazz capital of the world. So do you remember your first couple of weeks in New York? What, who you met in the beginning? What?
Yeah, I came down to study with Barry and George Coleman, but first couple of weeks in New York was terrifying. It was a different time in New York. It was it was a different city. It was a lot funkier. Times Square was, I remember I moved down with he was a trombone player at the time. He now plays trumpet. Jake Wilkinson, great player, my best friend in high school. We moved down, and he, we went to Times Square, and it was just, it was another world in New York back then. And coming from Toronto, I'd never seen anything like that, So, yeah, it was scary. And then all the best players from everywhere in the world come to New York. You think you're hot shit in wherever your town is, and you come to New York, and then you realize, I'm on the bottom rung.
One of the first concerts I ever saw when I was going to college in Boston, I came down to New York. One of the first, New York concerts I saw was you were playing at Smalls, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who was playing? Was it Joe Cohn?
It was John Marshall's band.
Oh yeah. Yeah. John Marshall's great.
This is like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember Roy Hargrove kind of just walked in and started playing with you guys.
Yeah. He just wouldn't come up with his trumpet and sit in. Yeah.
So that was like the first time I ever
saw the only guy that was allowed to do that.
Oh, he was the only one who could do that, right? So you in the beginning, you found it to be very intimidating.
Sure. Yeah. I was also a kid.
And 19 is still pretty young.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't that young, but yeah. I was already working in Toronto playing, but yeah, it was just, it was great. It was just a magical time when you first come.
Remember your first jazz gig, like playing standards and improvising in New York?
No, there wasn't any big first gig. My real actual gigs weren't until later. But in Toronto, I had already been playing, in high school. Bob Mover moved to Toronto from, I think he was in Montreal. I don't know if you know Bob Mover, an incredible saxophone player. He was a big mentor for me. When I was about 16, he moved to Toronto. And so I started playing, I'd be playing gigs with him and hanging out with him and learning from him. So I was already playing. I was playing with good players there. But yeah, New York is just the next level.
And you've lived through these different eras in New York.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to somebody, who wants to go to the city today? Because you've seen so many of these different, these eras.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to come to New York, you come to New York. I don't ever discourage anyone. If you got to have thick skin and you got to work. I practiced insane amounts, in my teens and through my 20s. But yeah, you got to work and obviously if you're doing it, you're in it for the music. So, it takes time. It takes time to, for most people to establish yourself. So you got to be patient and you also have to just work your ass off.
When do you feel like your career, where things started to branch out and you in New York, where you really felt like you were gaining some of the things, that some would describe as I guess you could say, quote unquote, they made it, playing on records and that sort of thing.
I mean, like mid-90s, I started, going to Europe and some of I had done a couple of records for the Dutch label Crisscross. And so those got me some cred. And then, I was just lucky in the late 90s. I started playing with, I was lucky. I got to play with a lot of great players that were still alive back then. Especially like, mid 90s to late 90s. Then I was in Al Gray's last band with Bobby Durham and Joe Cohn. And, played a lot with Jimmy Lovelace and Frank Gann was around and, I got to play with Mickey Roker and played a lot with Jimmy Cobb. I got very lucky, Harold Mabern, a lot of Barry, a lot of the players that were around. So kind of like, late 90s through the 2000s, it's also just perseverance. You got to stay around. You got to stick it out,
Yeah. That's the hard part. It is easy to get discouraged in this music, wanting to, I guess you could, do it and make a career for yourself, whatever that means, I'm not sure, maybe, but you seem to have like a, really good outlook on it. Maybe that's because, you didn't go to jazz college in a sense and you just went and started doing it.
Could be. I mean, I always did it. I never expected to, have, as a jazz musician, my expectations were very low. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, I lived past 30. That's amazing. Everything, yeah. So I've always done it for the music. If I have success, that's great. If not, doesn't really matter either. I've been lucky enough to just be able to support myself and live off my music, even when times were, slow. But yeah, it's always been about the music. I never did it for security. I never did it for anything else, really.
Yeah.
I also can't do anything else. So it's kind of.
So, the one last thing I wanted to ask you was, about what do you think separates someone who's a good improviser versus someone who's a great improviser? If you can try and describe that. I know that's kind of an abstract question.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, depends on who you consider a great improviser. I mean, I consider, Sonny and Joe Henderson are great improvisers, but also George Coleman is a great improviser and a totally different, way of thinking. Different minds work in different ways. And, for me, Kenny Dorham is one of the greatest improvisers of all time.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that he's not that creative, but to me, he's very creative. So it's kind of subjective. I don't really know what it is a good question, and I can't really say what makes a great improviser. I mean, for me personally, what I like, Tardo, we were talking about this the other day and driving to Philly with Tardo Hammer. He says, "Yeah, I like a player that sounds like a drunk guy, right, walking a tightrope."
Yeah.
It's like that feeling of, you don't know where the person's going to go. It's just that's, I mean, I agree. That's kind of what I like too in a player. So for me, that's a great improviser that can pull that off.
Yeah. Now it makes me think about, you're just living. It's almost like this is something that just came into my mind, but when you listen to someone make a great speech, just the same thing, but just when they solo, that's
sure.
Thinking about it that way.
And they know what they're talking about.
Right.
Their thoughts are organized, but it's not fabricated. They're not reading off a script.
Now, Grant, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much, and really, congrats on everything you're doing with the school, and yeah, thanks so much for talking with me today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, and tell people to hit us up on Tribeca Jazz Institute on Instagram, and say hey. And we have a jam session coming up. I don't know when this is going to air.
Today.
Today. Oh yeah. So Thursday night is one of our jam sessions at the Tribeca Jazz Institute, and the special guest is Michael Weiss.
Oh, nice.
7 to 10 Thursday night, no cover. It's a great hang, and all there's so many good players at the school now that it's really a great session. So come by if you're folks, if you're hearing this, come by on Thursday.
Check it out.
Yeah.